Let's get started!
Every one of them is strong! No fair!
Looks like there's still a few grammatical errors on the script. Well, to be fair, English is not my native language. Little person, what the heck are you doing?
上から飛び乗ってやっつけて臭い飯食わせます。
Kinda odd that there's no subtitles for what you just said. Anyways, let's begin. Okay, so this so-called analysis video will be split into two parts. The first one will just be about what fellow reptile is as a character, and the second part will be the general analysis and other stuff like what could have beens and what should have beens. So let's begin. This is fellow reptile, the token mutant member of the League of Losers, and is probably named after Master Splinter of the TMNT series. Now he may be the icon for this entire MHA rant channel, but that doesn't mean we can't rant about him. We call Deadline a f***ing dumbass and Miss Mindlayer hideously ugly all the time. Why can't fellow reptile be any different? With that said, let's move on to the rant/analysis. Fellow reptile is the token mutant member of the League of Losers. He's a green lizard person cosplaying as his idol. Alleyway.
Once a hero receives payment to protect people, they aren't a real hero anymore.
Now, despite his reptilian physical mutations, he's not that really different from a regular human. He doesn't have any lizard-like habits, strange eyes, ability to molt, cold blood, camouflage, reptilian life longevity, nor a tail. Heck, his hands are just regular human hands with little claws on the tips. Very much unlike real geckos with odd-looking patterns on their hands and feet. So technically he's just a green scaly human with a lizard's head, and even then he doesn't even have lizard teeth.
What?
So yeah, there's nothing remarkable about his appearance. Let's move on to his quirk. His quirk is named Gecko. It gives fellow reptile the ability to cling on solid surfaces. It's also the reason why he looks like a lizard. And that's literally the entire quirk. Now you might think it's just a simple quirk, but notice how fellow reptile can still cling, even with his shoes on. This means that the gecko quirk works not by realistic logic, but through quirk magic.
Wow!
Technically speaking, fellow reptile's quirk works by making his hands and feet generate a short-ranged attraction field, allowing them to pull themselves onto an object.
Remember, the absolutely vital element of this mission is surprise.
It's quite amazing when you think about it, but overall the quirk itself is really not that extraordinary, and is actually one of the weakest quirks in the manga. In fact, fellow reptile doesn't even use it that much. You can rewrite the entire series with fellow reptile not having any sticking ability, and everything would still be the same. Now with his quirk done, let's move on to skill. Specifically, how good is fellow reptile when it comes to combat? You'd think he'd be extremely proficient with bladed weaponry, seeing he initially idolized Alleyway. But no.
You brought this on yourself, girl!
About time I got a solid hit in!
Every one of them is strong! No fair!
Fellow reptile doesn't have any real skill when it comes to sword-based combat. He just wildly swings his sword around. And maybe throw a knife, and that's about it.
One-trick pony.
Just compare his fight scenes with Alleyways, and the difference in overall skill is easily apparent. Fellow reptile doesn't even use his quirk in combat for some amazing parkour techniques.
Jeez, you're persistent.
If I'm going to rate his combat capabilities, I'll give him a 3, because at least he's somewhat strong enough to lift such a huge bunch of swords relatively effortlessly. Next, we move on to character background and overall personality. As the League of Loser member with the least focus and screen time, fellow reptile is unsurprisingly the simplest and least developed of them all. He's incredibly bland, and he didn't even get a major role until very late into the manga. He was supposed to be Handyman's gamer buddy, but the two are never once shown talking to each other about video games outside of last minute made up flashbacks. Hell, Handyman doesn't even treat him differently from the rest of the league. Furthermore, fellow Reptile's entire shtick of being a minion and follower makes him even blander and boring than he actually is. He has basically no character agency of his own. While you could say being a follower is just fine, MHA already has bird brains for that. And they're way better followers than some lizard person who barely knows how to fight. As for his backstory, fellow Reptile is a victim of mutant discrimination as a kid. Mutant discrimination is a world building aspect only fully introduced very late into the manga to be of actual relevance. This, combined with fellow Reptile being an incredibly minor character with barely any development, resulted in absolutely zero emotional impact, and basically almost no one cared about it anyways. Now before we move on to the second segment of the rant, I'd like to talk about his connection with Alleyway for a bit.
Stay!
Alleyway is fellow Reptile's idol, the one who gave him a sense of purpose. After this guy got arrested, fellow Reptile quickly joined the League of Losers because the media made it look like Alleyway's a member there.
Isn't he one of your guys?
Not technically, but that's what the media made it look like.
Well, actually the league's goal is drastically different from Alleyway's, nor the guy is even a member there. Yet fellow Reptile still stayed because plot. Midway through the story, he stopped simping for Alleyway and switched to simping for Handyman after seeing his awesome plot armor in action. And that's it. But after that he's still wearing his Alleyway cosplay for some reason, probably because it's too expensive to just throw out. Oh hey there, Miss Mindlayer. Aren't you supposed to be in a business trip today?
I just went to visit.
Okay then.
What's this?
It's the fellow Reptile incredibly honest analysis. Yeah. I'm ranting about this channel's mascot and disguising it as an analysis video.
Alright?
Okay, let's continue. Okay, now we move on to the part 2 of the fellow Reptile analysis. In this segment we are going to look at this guy as part of the big picture. About what role does he play in the grand scheme of things. Now I'm going straight to the point without sugarcoating it. Fellow Reptile, like basically almost every single MHA villain, is badly written. But unlike Handyman, whose plot armor incarnate, Deadline, a master of Aspulls, or Libra and Sunbert, both Mary Sue's, fellow Reptile is on the opposite side of the spectrum. He's not plot armored, he's got no Aspulls, and sure as hell he's not a Mary Sue. He's just plain useless and irrelevant. Fellow Reptile has absolutely no contributions to the story. You can easily remove him and virtually nothing will happen. His sword skills are unremarkable. He has no special role. He doesn't have a distinctive personality. His so-called friendship with Handyman is barely given any focus and is just ham-fisted in through flashbacks. And to top it all off, his quirk is extremely weak and borderline useless. Just compare it to literally any other animal-based quirk in MHA, and you can easily see that he's got the worst one. For maximum comparison, Frogget.
So you are sweet!
Obviously, I can jump high and cling to pretty much any. My tongue, stick it out about 20 meters. I can spit out my stomach so I can clean it. Finally, I also secrete a toxic mucus. It just stings a bit.
As you can see, he's so weak he literally can't do anything even if he wanted to. He's so weak he's outclassed by basically anyone. He's so weak the heroes don't even count him as a threat at all. Just look at NVA. He and the rest of the League of Losers are already given godlike levels of plot armor. And he still can't win. Also, it's kinda funny that the blandest and most boring league member faced off against the blandest and most boring MLA elite. It's like a match made in boring heaven. Going back, let's ask the real question here. Why the hell is fellow Reptile still here if he's just gonna be useless? We got way more powerful villains like Magnet, Mr. Muscle, Marksman, Marble, and Miss Mindlayer. And yet this useless lizard somehow outlived them all to the very end, despite doing absolutely nothing and barely getting any attention or screen time. He provides no challenge to the heroes and adds nothing to the story. Then why the f did he get to stay when everyone else got removed? Unfortunately, this is a question I cannot answer. Because I simply don't know the answer. Now you might ask, what about his role in the finale? Why are you calling him useless if he actually did something? Well, yeah, you could say it counts as a role even if it's literally at the very f***ing end of the manga. But even then, look at this. He's just a puppet. The army is not his own. The giant quirk he's using is also not his own. And what you thought as a clever move on his part just turned out to be one of Deadline's ass pulls. So in the end he still didn't achieve anything.
What?
It gets sillier when you realize he's not even needed in the entire Grillby rescue mission. Deadline could have just sent one of his bird brains. Or maybe one of his Tartarus villains. Or get Death Note to tap into the hospital loudspeakers to play the recording. Or hell, he could just go within 5 kilometers and warp Grillby himself with his own warp quirk. Fellow Reptile is literally so useless and weak the plot had to bend backwards just to give him a role. So yeah. The guy's absolutely irrelevant. Now some people say he's an underdog. While yes, he could be classified as one, but he lacked the aspect what made underdogs interesting in the first place. He didn't get any development and stayed as a static character for the rest of the manga. He started out weak and useless, and in the end, he's still weak and useless. What Fellow Reptile is a wasted character, which is exactly like every single MHA villain, Deadline included. He could have been a skilled assassin like Alleyway, or have more reptilian traits to make him stand out more, or hell, he could have been Handyman's best buddy, with a special emphasis on their gamer-bro relationship. This also has an added bonus on showing another side to Handyman, as well as giving redeeming qualities to the two. But yeah, none of those happened. But it's now far too late to do some character development anyways. Fellow Reptiles now officially solidified his status as the second most worthless and irrelevant character of MHA, with Libera being the first.
What? What was his deal? So weird.
I just ruined the entire character of Fellow Reptile for myself. He's one of my favorite characters and now I just realized how useless and irrelevant he is. Now I don't like him anymore. Marble is now my favorite character.
I'm heading out for a bit.